Before we get started today, I wanted to say thank you to my very latest patron, who I lovingly call Friends with Benefits, for supporting Best Forever. So a major shout out to my amazing friend Adri, who also hosts the amazing Harry Potter and politics themed podcast, Accio Politics. Adri's been a guest on Best Forevers many times, as well as she's had me on Accio Politics a few times. And if you're not familiar with her podcast, she goes through each Harry Potter book chapter by chapter and connects it to a different type of politic. And then after each book, she also covers the movies with a whole host of amazing guests. And so you want to be sure to check out her podcast. And can I say that not only is her support and her podcast fierce, so are the stickers that she creates for Accio Politics Patreon page. They are amazing. So you want to be sure to check out her podcast, get it in your ear holes immediately. And Adri, thank you so much for being one of my very best pod friends, my manifesting partner who we talk to almost every single day through voice memos. It just means so much to have known you this last year and to have your persistent, consistent, and undying support. Thank you so much. You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more in your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Alysa Lucas, and folks, I had this episode all scripted out, and then Netflix dropped a bomb on me, and dropped a bomb on a lot of us, because today, as I'm recording this, Tuesday, February, what day is it? I don't even know what the date is. 19th, so get it in the calendar and the history books and the diary. This is the day that Netflix canceled their original series called Friends from College. And what I wanted to do today was actually talk to you about this amazing show that is on Netflix. I hope they don't tear out the first 2 seasons right out of their library, because then you'll miss out on it. So Netflix, don't do that. But here's the thing. This semester in Michigan, we've had a lot of snow, and even at my university, we've had a lot of snow days, which is particularly unusual. And so what that allows me to do, and as you might guess how much I love this, it gives me extra time to watch some TV shows. And so one of the shows that I got a chance to rewatch, because I've watched the show several times, and that is Friends from College. The show centers around 6 friends who had attended Harvard together and now reunite in New York City as they all began to turn 40. Their relationships can be described as intertwined, complicated, and a lot of times just stuck in the past. It's like a time machine that went nowhere. It's just stuck in the year they were in college. The relationships are often also called or described, not just by me, but as dysfunctional. The Rotten Tomatoes webpage indicates the show is ranked 24% rotten by critics and 81% fresh by viewers. So if you're not familiar with Rotten Tomatoes, they review movies, TV shows, etc. And if you're below 50%, you get a squashed Rotten Tomato. If you're above 50%, you get that fresh, lovely tomato. So you can see there is quite a distinction between how the critics view Friends from College and how the viewers view it. So let's first talk about some of the critics. They describe the show like this. First, it was not secretly good, though it may have been good enough things about it. It was just bad. Willa Paskin from Slate. Keegan-Michael Key, Kobe Smulders, Billy Eckner, what's not to like? Mostly this. Veeam Gay Newsday. The overwhelming mark against Friends from College is it's asking you to spend time with a group of hopeless people, and finding humor in their shortcomings says a little something about us. Winlay May, news.com.au. And then finally, Friends from College is just emotional enough to see certain characters in a different light, and it's just funny enough to almost let their questionable behavior slide. Kira Allen, Daily Journal, which is from Illinois. So all 4 of those critiques are from the Rotten Tomatoes webpage, which is linked in my show notes. So when I describe the show to others, I use this line. It is the best show about the worst people. But overall, Friends from College, at least in its first season, did not have that praise. And some of you might be like, that doesn't seem like a very good description of the show. Which actually, that's how I describe it, but I think I would change how I describe it based on my latest viewing of the show. So, in an article for IndieWire by Michael Schneider, Friends from College was hit by critics in season 1, what the creators learned lessons for season 2. The writers of the show are a married couple named Nick Stoller and Francesca Del Banco. Quote, people were saying these characters are just so horrible. Hanging out with them is like crawling over broken glass. It made us look in the mirror and think, oh God, is this what the world thinks of us? But the article noted that despite this feedback, viewers watched the season 1 completely, so season 2 was ordered. So currently on Netflix, you can watch both seasons, and now that might be all we get, but I have noticed today, February 19th, that there has been a little bit of backlash, maybe not as much as when Netflix tried to pull the TV show Friends, right? By the end of the day, they're like, no, we're not taking it. But here, there was some backlash. There's a petition on change.org that I've already signed, and I will link in show notes if you agree with me or watch the show and then decide, yeah, we want a season 3 back. So it sounds like season 1 was not critically acclaimed. Not every show needs to be. And it seems overall that viewers enjoyed it or at least completed the entire season, which led to season 2. Now, I don't know what the numbers are on completion of season 2, but I would think that the show would at least go to at least one more season. Now, the seasons are short. They're 8 episodes each, and they're about a half an hour long episode. So you can actually watch both shows if you did like an 8-hour binge session. I know some of you are like, I ain't got that kind of time. Well, it would be really easy to watch a couple episodes a day and have it cranked out in a week. And so you can really get a good sense of the show from what I'm going to talk about today. And then maybe you go and watch it and maybe you'll see that you want a season 3. But that's not why I'm doing this episode. In fact, I had this all scripted out before Netflix dropped that bomb that I wanted to talk about the show because I think that there's so much to learn from it. And so you might be wondering then, well, it sounds like there's some controversy, and aren't you concerned about the controversy around the show? So let's talk about that. The show focuses on 6 friends, Ethan, Lisa, Max, Nick, Sam, and Marianne, who are all friends in college. Ethan and Lisa were dating in college and then they marry. But Ethan and Sam essentially are having an affair through adulthood. So they were maybe doing that in college. So maybe the entire time that Ethan and Lisa have been together, he has been having an affair with his friend and Sam has been having an affair with her friend, right? So, and then Ethan and Lisa, what really sort of starts the show out is that they move back to New York City where the other 4 friends are located. So the storyline of the affair between Ethan and Sam seems to be a plot point that is disturbing and problematic for viewers. Although infidelity does occur in romantic relationships and the third party may be a friend, it may just be something folks don't want to watch. For some people, it might be like, this is too real, or there's nothing fun in that. And I'm like, I just got done watching 6 seasons of Gossip Girl, and there were affairs all over the place. And I don't remember there being backlash. Now it's a teen drama, so maybe there's a different expectation that with this particular show, people saw it as maybe more realistic, or maybe our interests and what we want and the preferences for our TV have changed. But I haven't necessarily turned off other shows that have an infidelity storyline. And so I don't know if it's this particular storyline. And in that IndieWire article, they also talk about this idea that the characters weren't really punished for their affair. And what you see maybe more is that Ethan's wife, Lisa, who is also friends with Sam, is the one who's punished most. And so isn't that the case when an infidelity happens? It's the partner who's being cheated on who obviously gets the worst treatment. And one of the things that I think about it is this. Infidelity does occur. It doesn't mean I approve of it, condone it, participate in it, or would stand by and allow some of those things to happen to my friends without saying anything. Now, that's a real hard conversation to have, and that might be an episode topic in the future, because what do you do if you know that your friend's boyfriend or partner, wife, whatever the case, is cheating on them? Do you tell them? Is it their business? Do you get involved? And I think that is really dependent on a lot of factors. But for me, it reflects a behavior that humans participate in. And I think that the show over 2 seasons really shows what might happen and how that not only impacts the two people are having an affair, how it impacts the partner who's being cheated on, both of their partners because they're both married, and then how it impacts maybe the idea of the friendship group, the workplace, the children, so on and so forth. That it really is a lesson that can be learned of what can happen when people have affairs. But I can understand totally if someone's watching this that they're like, I had a partner cheat on me, I'm not watching this. Understood. Got it. So my best friend Kate, who's been on the show, also really enjoys the show, and I asked her about it for this episode. She says that the character Ethan Taylor, who's played by Keegan-Michael Key, and he plays the character that's cheating on his wife with one of their best friends, says, "But I'm not a monster, I'm just a flawed piece of shit," is what won over my heart. So that's a quote that Ethan says, "But I'm not a monster, I'm just a flawed piece of shit." And that's what really won Kate over. She continues to say, "I honestly don't think they are so terrible of humans. I think they're super flawed middle-aged humans with some emotional immaturity for sure, but some of the marriage dynamics of long-term relationships and friendships are so real." She says, "So far, season 2 is my fave. It feels lighter. The humor is so awesome. But I really appreciate that these characters are all imperfect because I think that's pretty fucking real. And as someone who grew up with a lot of perfection pressure, I definitely gravitate towards the relief of embracing the fucked up moments, trying to learn from them, trying to have remorse for them, and trying to move forward with forgiveness for self and others, and to be a more empathetic person. I love this fucking show." Okay, so she definitely is on board with it. And I think that's the point. Should we be censoring or turning off our television because shows show things that do happen in life? That there's something that we can pull from it, there's something that we can learn from it, and that it's not just in this affair, which is the romantic relationship, that this is a group of 6 friends and it impacts everyone, and there's all these other moments of just imperfect things happening, things that are dark, things that are problematic. And it's like, that's life. Maybe not that every single bad thing happens to one person, but here are people who are trying to navigate life together or as friends and all the different experiences they have. I mean, that seems pretty real to me. That in my friendship group, that there might be someone who has marital problems, that there might be several of us who have work problems. There are several of us that might have infertility issues. Like, there's so many different things that can happen. Caregiving for a parent, mental health issues. And when you bring that all together, what does that look like when you have 6 people who are quote unquote friends from college? For me, there is something to be said about watching shows like Friends from College as a way to analyze and learn more about relationships, but specifically friendships. Honestly, as I watch, all I could do is think about the issues that plague their friendships and what we could actually learn by watching the show. And even more, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the show after watching it through twice, which is what inspired this particular episode. For me, when I'm done with it, when I turn it off, I'm still thinking about it. And maybe that's the person in me who studies and teaches relationships. For me, this is a show that is ripe and perfect to show in my dark side of interpersonal communication class. I've showed other TV shows of infidelity or questions about infidelity, questions about aggression, questions about envy, jealousy, deception, hurt, teasing, social aggression. I mean, all the topics we talk about. One of the things that I take great pride in because I love media so much and I consume so much of it is bringing in a wide range of examples that my students can watch and analyze, because we might not be able to enter someone's home and be like, "Do you mind if all 30 of us sit around the kitchen table while you have a conflict?" We can't do that. So the next best thing is media. And yeah, sometimes it's over the top. Sometimes if I'm showing a clip from The Walking Dead, they're like, "Dr. Lucas, zombies don't exist." Well, do they? Do they not? That's a debate for a different show. But that's the idea, is that these are great tools. And so I think, maybe that's not why we have TV. Well, we got to keep it going because people need to learn about relationships. But I think it's a pretty good reason, though, too, right? That if we're only showing these, I think that the media should show more celebrations of friendship, for sure. I think they should show more friendships overall. I think there should be more stories where the focus is friendship. I think we should spend more time talking about men's friendships. I think we should spend more time talking about friendships in the LGBTQ community. So as you can see, I have a laundry list of things that I think the media should change or do. But one thing I don't think they should do is only show what appears to be perfect examples of relationships in life, because that's bullshit. Life is ups and downs, and our ability to handle the chaos and the uncertainty and try to, maybe it's not achieving balance, it's managing the balance of the good and the bad, the light and the dark. And so although there are some things that are very problematic with the show, they are lessons for us to learn from. Lessons. So one of the things I will say, though, too, is that I participate in a lot of binges. I love TV. It's probably my favorite form of media, which seems weird since I host a podcast. I love podcasts, but I'm more likely to listen to them when I'm getting ready in the morning or I'm driving or I'm doing chores. But TV is just sort of always on otherwise for me. And so one of the things that I thought is like, I want to add in more discussions and analyses of friendship in the media. And I already do the awesome book series with Claire, who comes on, and we do the different book episodes. Like last week we did I Know What You Did Last Summer by Lois Duncan. But the idea is there's lots of things that I'm watching where I'm like, oh, that would be really cool for people to think about, or I wonder if people have seen this and thought about that after watching the podcast. So what I've decided to do is to add episodes in every so often that will focus on media, like what I'm doing today with Friends with College. I would like to do episodes about Veronica Mars before the new Hulu series comes out. I'd like to do Harry Potter at some point. I would love to do Psych. I love their friendship. Sean and Gus are my favorites. And also thinking about some movies, like I just watched Tag the other day, and that was a really interesting friendship where these guys have been playing tag for their entire life. And so what I'll do is I'll have some episodes that are dedicated to it. And then as things happen and I watch and I have ideas, I'm going to make some videos and post them on Patreon for my friends with benefits. And so I have Gossip Girl recorded. I'm just trying to get it uploaded, having some issues. So please stand by there. I'm going to record the rest on my computer. The issue is when I record on my phone. And I'm also going to do the second one after Gossip Girl will be Tag, because those are the first things I want to talk about. But today's focus, though, is on the problematic friendship showcased in Friends from College and how we might be able to use that analysis to avoid similar mistakes in our own friendships. So the 6 friends met while attending college, and we truly get a glimpse of their connection at the start of each episode, which I really enjoy. This is a really cool part of the show. Second very cool part of the show is the music. I won't be going into a lot of that, but as you watch the show or rewatch it, make note of the music that they have, because I think they pick really popular songs or songs that I know from, and part of it is I might be able to connect because I just turned 40 and they're turning 40, so it's really catching that vibe. But I really appreciate the music to set the tone for what's happening in the episode, either at the start, during the episode, or at the end. But my favorite part is that they connect at the beginning of each episode, and we see a bird's eye view of them enjoying various meals around the table together. So it's actually hard to tell. I question this every time I watch, if it's the actors or it's just people who stand in to create this particular opening. And every opening is a little different, and so it intercuts several different scenarios of this bird's eye view where the camera is right above this really beautiful table that is either decorated for a holiday, it's a late night study session, it's someone's birthday, they're drinking, they might move the table for a dance party, and a lot of that comes of how together they grew together over a table, right? Like that in college, this was maybe where they spent most of their time getting to know each other and being friends. And it's actually pretty cool of them to focus on something that brings people together, like food and drinks. And then it seems that perhaps no matter what happens, we may continue to join each other around some sort of table throughout our life, right? That maybe in college, there's some residence hall or apartment or house where the majority of the friend group hangs out. And so you have a memory there, but then when you graduate, what does that look like? Is it once a year? Is it at a restaurant? Is it at someone's house? Or when the six come together in the show back in New York City, is there more opportunity to get around the table more and more and more and more? And what happens around that table? There's a lot of things that happen around the table in the show, and I think that is a critical part of it. So maybe it happens a lot when we're in college, sitting around the table, and maybe it happens less frequently over time, but it still brings people back together. And maybe even more, those meals in college develop the friendship faster and deeper, and then that carries over for the rest of the friendship, which in this case continues for many decades until they're turning 40, maybe some 20-ish years later after they first became friends. But although they seem to have a history of friendship together, it doesn't always seem to be healthy. And so I think that the show not only focuses on the flawed choices that these characters make, but also how they stick together. They're stuck. They're stuck in roles in the friendship. They're stuck in the friendship because it's what they know. So let me tell you a little bit about the friends so you can see how this works together, and then I'm going to talk about some specific examples from the show. Obviously, the storyline of the affair is a major spoiler, but that is something that it's the very first scene that introduces you, and it might even be in some descriptions of the show that you find. But overall, I'll talk about some things generally. I'll talk about some things a little bit more specific, but I don't want to spoil too much because I'm sure that many of you will want to watch the show, but also to consider that many of you might see the show so that there's enough information so you can be like, oh, I know what she's talking about. Okay, so Ethan, again, is played by Keegan-Michael Key, and he is married to Lisa and having an affair with Sam. He and Lisa are trying to get pregnant, and so I think that's a really important issue that the show covers because they've had difficulty for years, and there's so many people have infertility issues. Ethan, in the past, has had critically acclaimed books, but is now being forced into the young adult industry by his friend Max. And so it's one of those things that he's moving back to New York City, maybe to be able to get back into books, back into writing, but maybe books that'll actually make him money, him and his wife, in their path in which to have children. And so that's what he's doing. So what I have done here is I've explained this character, but then I also asked Kate about the characters, and so I'm going to intercut that in while I talk about them. So Kate says Ethan hurts people, but he also loves people. He is so vain. He probably thinks this song is about him. Oh, that's a classic joke. If you don't know that song, then you're younger than me. So he's so vain, but he also wanted to give Lisa a baby, even though he didn't know if he wanted one himself. But she wanted a baby so bad. The scene is really beautiful when he tells her that. He's definitely an attention whore and would be so annoying because he's that goofy guy with all these characters and voices and things like that. But I also like when he is honest about himself and his flaws. I think most people are flawed pieces of shit, going back to the quote by Ethan, but not necessarily monsters. Especially as I get older, I see much more of that now. And one of the things that I think about Ethan is that it seems like he tries to hide a lot of that with the goofiness to ignore, what might be going on, and then he'll dip into a voice, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but how he sort of has interactions with people that might be seen confrontational as he turns into sort of the comedian and the jokester, which, is fun, and there's even, fun Ethan that they want to show up at weddings and parties and things like that, and he's over the top. But one of the things that I can imagine is that gets pretty annoying over time. And in my dark side of interpersonal class, we call that a fatal attraction, that the thing that most attracted us to people can be the thing that annoys us the most about them. And so humor is like, they're so fun, but then it's like they never take anything seriously. Grr. So then up next, we have Max, who's played by the amazing Fritz Savage, and Ethan seem to be closest friends together. And Max tries to help Ethan make money by writing in the genre of books that is really popular right now, the young adult genre. He seems to be excited to have Ethan and Lisa back in New York, but his partner, Felix, who's played by Billy Eichner, is not as excited because when all the friends get together, he thinks that they're very loud. And there's also sort of this in-group, out-group. It never feels like Felix can be able to find a way to get into the group, so it's always just the six of them. Like, how can you break in when they've had so much history? And so I think what you see is that other people come and go, but it's the six that stay strong. Maybe in some cases that is seen as positive in terms of loyalty, but in other cases, you're really missing out on these other people in your life, and that we need different types of people in our life, and maybe not just the friends from college. We need our friends from work. We need our partners. We need our family. We need our neighbors, whatever the case might be. So one of the things that really annoys Felix is that the 3 men of the group, because of the 6, there's 3 men and 3 women. So that's Ethan, Max, and Nick. When they come together, Nick, who's played by Nate Faxon, they all greet each other by grabbing each other's balls and just kind of being like, and they're like grabbing each other, making these noises. And it's one of those things where it's overbearing or too much, because it's like you're meeting these people for the first time and it's loud. You can't get a word in. You don't want to grab these guys' balls because you just met them. So, and it's not part of your friendship deal, right? It's an inside joke. And again, as we talked about in the episode with Zach and Mitch, that sometimes those inside jokes really help bond you, but sometimes they can leave people out. So Kate says that she adores Fred Savage. He's so caught up in his friends and the role he plays in their group dynamic, but he also wants to grow up and achieve things. So it does feel like he is kept behind because of the group. It's like, I want to go do this, and I'm with Felix, and I want to get married, and I want to become a writer, and I want to move forward. But then it's like he's always pushed back into this position like he's the Bobby Brady of the family, that Ethan and Nick are Greg and Peter, and he's the youngest kid who's kind of put in that younger brother role and maybe not taken as seriously. And she says that Felix is the fucking best, and he has a whole Ray Donovan thing that you'd have to watch the show to see, but she says, I cannot even. And so that's his way of trying to connect with Ethan to talk about a particular interaction that I'll mention later. And Ethan's way is to sort of joke back, and he starts talking about The Closer, which is another show. And so they're talking in TV show metaphors rather than actually talking about the issue. So the third guy in the group is Nick, again played by Nate Faxon, is likely described by his friends as someone with a lot of money, no ambitions, and an affinity for sleeping around with women. He doesn't seem to be too connected to anyone, and it makes me wonder why they're even friends with him. But Nick seems to be the closest with Ethan's wife Lisa and with their friend Mary Ann. And overall, though, it seems that he is in love with Ethan's wife Lisa. So you see a lot of incestual relationships, if you will, within the friendship group. And I think of that because I just got done watching Gossip Girl, and I recorded that video for Patreon, and I started talking about that. It's like, unless they're related to each other, and in some cases that's even an issue, everyone slept with everyone, And so what you see here is that they don't go much outside the group for really anything. And so Kate says Nate Faxon's character is obviously stunted, but he also has a big heart. He has no guilt or boundaries either. I love him, though. He has no backbone and extreme moral flexibility. He's like a big slobbery dog of a man who loves hard and fucks up hard and never feels too bad. So I think that's really interesting, is that maybe that's why it doesn't feel like he's so connected. He does love them all, but he doesn't make a big deal about the things that other people are making a big deal about, which can cause some rifts between people. Because if I am friends with Nick and he does something that bothers me and he's like, oh, it's not a big deal, well, that can be even more offensive, because it's like, no, you're my friend, so you shouldn't do that. And then it kind of takes him a while to figure out that he's done something wrong, and then he might need to apologize for it. And so it almost feels like when Kate says that he's stunted, he seems so far back in where he is in relationships that he has many years of learning still to do. And even being in that, he's 40, sleeping around with young girls in college, the college-age girls, and he goes to Sam to redecorate his apartment, and she's like, let me help you. And he's like, oh yeah, I really want to upgrade to being an adult. And then the first thing he wants to add to his apartment is this big shiny light that says Fun Boy. And it's like, no, that's not how you might adult, right? So he is very laid back. I do believe he cares about all of his friends, but sometimes it just feels like he isn't there, and then he shows up and he's in there for the, the ball grabbing or a little fake guitar, rock out sesh where he's playing the drums while Ethan and Max are, working it out on their guitars, or maybe he's working on the piano. It's like he's there for all the fun. Sometimes he doesn't understand the non-fun, and it takes him a while to get to the part where he has to understand that he may be being a problem. So, moving to the ladies, Lisa is played by Colby Smulders, who you might know as Robin from How I Met Your Mother. And Lisa, when she arrives in New York with her husband Ethan, is starting a new but stressful job as a lawyer. And she is also very stressed about getting pregnant. She seems less excited to be reunited with the friends, so she doesn't seem like, yay, my friends. And Ethan's like, woo! He's fun Ethan, and, the band's back together, and it's almost as if the time machine takes them back to when they were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. She also seems less excited to be reunited with Sam, who, as a reminder, Ethan and her are having an affair, but it doesn't seem like she is aware of it at a conscious level. But there does seem to be something going on between Sam and Lisa. And I think it's that sort of stereotypical idea of like frenemies. They have a competition with each other. Sam's a little bit older, and so she calls her Froshy or something like that. That is because she was a freshman. And so it's like these nicknames, it's like, hey, I'm 40. Let's not call me that name anymore. It's stupid. And she just doesn't seem to be appreciate it, but they always seem to be over trying to compete or impress each other. In fact, Sam buys Ethan and Lisa a huge bed as a welcome gift when she learns that they're trying to have a baby. And it's like, but you're having an affair with her husband. And it's so, I don't know if that on Sam's side is guilt, but it's also this competition between them that you see throughout both seasons. Kate says, Lisa is heartbreaking. Sometimes I hate her, but her fluctuation between her jealousy and her hurt and having fun. And so there is this idea that she loves, that she always wants to tell everyone she's a lawyer. I love that she flies off the handle because she can't really do small boundaries, and her infertility struggles are so real. It remind me a lot of my friends who've gone through the same things. And the idea is her jealousy, and Kate, correct use here, because I think once she finds out about the affair, there is a level of jealousy, and she just can't handle Sam having fun or being normal. It's like, don't you know that you've ruined my life because you've had an affair with my husband? But before that, I do think that competition is that they're actually envious of each other, that, again, they just are always competing. And stereotypically it would be two women where, we say that women bring each other down. I see some of that, or it's like fake embracing them and lifting them up, And so their relationship is really complicated. And I think it's obviously rooted in the affair and the side relationship of Ethan and Sam. Sam is played by Annie Parise, and she is married with 2 kids and having the affair with Ethan. I feel like I keep saying that, like, let's give them both scarlet letters, right? Ethan and Sam. But I mean, I want to be sure you know who each of the characters are, so I do have that in each description, but you're like, okay, we got it. She seems especially, like, she doesn't want anyone to know that they're having an affair, but at the same time, she wants it to be an affair and not something that becomes real. It's almost like it's been this side fun thing for her entire life. So she is really obsessed with it not being an affair, but being an affair because that's exciting, but don't give it a name. But then also obsessed with maintaining her family together without any problems. Like, it's like, no, we can't do that. That'll blow up my family. No, you can't do that. I have a family. And it's like, well, most of her time doesn't seem to be spent focusing on her family. It seems to be focused on Ethan. And at least in Ethan's case, he is focused on his wife, Lisa. I believe that he loves Lisa. And like Kate said, that he wants to help her have a child because that's something that she wants in life. So Sam is seeing a therapist, but is particularly aggressive toward her, constantly challenging her or feeling challenged by the questions the therapist asks and the observations she makes. Sam repeatedly says that it's not an affair, right? And anytime the therapist brings up anything, Sam like shoots her down. Like, if I was the therapist, I'd be like, yeah, you're not my patient anymore. I'll find you someone else, because I think she's that combative with the therapist. And maybe that's the point, is that she is transferring her guilt and anger and rage for her own behaviors at the therapist, who's calling her out on her shit. And so I think that's some of it. Now, Kate believes that Sam is super interesting because, like I said, can't even allow people to call a relationship with Ian an affair. Hey, great minds think alike. She can still maintain some closeness with Lisa, but what she is doing is horrendous. She also cares about them too. It's so fucking human. Her layered feelings over it are so interesting to me. And for me, I may disagree with Kate. Maybe Kate will have to come on and we'll do a little Patreon debate over the characters. But I feel like Sam is like Nick, where she doesn't feel very connected, or Nick feels laid back and just kind of an easygoing guy, and everything's cool. And whereas I feel like Sam carries things over people, or she holds things over people. I do think that she thinks she's better than everyone. I just had that thought now. That just came to me. I think she thinks she's better than everyone, but where she might be having the most issues. And so maybe it's a level of insecurity in how she treats the rest of her friends. And so it's like she does try with Lisa. I think Kate's right there, that it's like, she tries to meet and talk with Lisa about what happened and that sort of thing. And so it's like she's trying to reach out, but at the same time, I think maybe the problem that people have is, again, it's Lisa who gets hurt with the affair, not with Ethan and Sam. And I think we see more of that in season 2, sort of the outcome and the destruction. And maybe that is the punishment. You've ruined your relationship. And Sam wants to keep her husband, but it's like, she wants to maintain that relationship, but they're all making horrible decisions. I just hit the mic. Sorry. Everyone's making horrible decisions, including myself as I hit the mic. Okay, so the last character is Marianne, played by Jae Soo Park. I talk about her last because, to be honest, she seems to be the last thought on anyone's mind in the show. She is the one person who knows about the affair between Ethan and Sam. Sam numerous times says that Marianne is her best friend, but I feel like the only time that they're really interacting is something to do with the affair. And I think that if there had been a season 3, or if the season 3 comes, Netflix, the creators of the show, can we see how Marianne and Sam are friends? And also just overall, I'd like to see more of how they built their relationships, because again, much like Max, I feel like she's seen as the little sister and is pushed aside. She's the Cindy Brady! And Sam would be Marsha Brady, and then Lisa would be Jan. Oh man, did they take the Brady Bunch, take the idea of siblings and turn it into friendship? Because I feel like there's a real clear connection here. Maybe that's just my head. Brady Bunch is one of my favorite shows, sorry. So Marianne, like Nick, doesn't seem to fit into the group based on how they connect with each other. And overall, to me, like I said, she seems less connected. She's an aspiring actress, has a shit ton of unpaid parking tickets to the point where she just buys a new car instead of paying them. And she's pretty upfront about whether or not she wants to be bothered. So she says no and walks away frequently, which is really inspiring, because how many of us don't say no, right? So someone will come up and be like, hi, I'm so-and-so. She's like, no, thank you. And she walks away just because she doesn't want to have that conversation. Or, will you do this? No. And then again, she walks away. She disappears on her friends a lot. But there is something inspiring about it. She does have a guy of interest who stays with her when he's in town, but otherwise it's just her and her bunny and her plays. And I feel like, and in some cases, she is helpful. She lets Ethan and Lisa first live with her. There's other people. I feel like we spend some of the most time in Mary Ann's house, and so I think we see a lot of that because she has parties, she takes people in, and so maybe it's one of those things that she's the most giving friend and that they're forgetting to give something to her. So Kate says, I love Marianne's unfiltered and unapologetic way she lives her life. And I would agree with Kate here in the sense of she does what she wants to do. She wants to be an actress, and she'll do these, really awful plays. They're so bad, so cringy, but I think that's the idea. And so it's like, I'm going to do it this way. And then Kate goes on to say, I even love that she doesn't allow Meryl Morgan to even interact with her. And she's just like, nope. So it's this girl that they went to Harvard with who doesn't remember any of them except Nick, and is like, hi, I'm Meryl Morgan. And she's just like, nope, no thank you. Walks away from her. And she did ditch her friends during a car accident. And that's not something Kate could do, but she said it was really funny to her. And so I think you get a sense of who each of these people are, but thinking about how they operate together, there seems to be a hierarchy, and that they set these roles in their friendship, maybe based on how they were when they were 19. So you have Ethan come in, and he was probably class clown. And Max was super, excited to do stuff and maybe seen as a little nerdy, and maybe he got pushed over. And Nick was the cool kid who's probably smoking weed between classes in high school. And then they all go to college. Then you have Lisa, who is, gosh, I wonder what she was like. I feel like she's probably changed the most, where Sam, I think, has always been sort of in charge of everything. And she, thinks that she's better than others, and that Marianne was really giving and maybe a lot more naive. And, Lisa is a question mark for me. I guess how I guess now, if I'm thinking of it off the top of my head, is that she is very much like had an idea about what life was going to be like and what it would mean to be a lawyer, what it mean to be married, what it mean to be having children, that there's certain things that you do in life. So maybe that she has certain expectations. And then when those things start falling apart, it's almost as if the rug has been pulled out from underneath her. So maybe she was idealistic and really interested in sort of following the path in life that is pretty much set down for most of us, right? Or at least that's the expectation, that we follow this path. So I wanted to talk to you about a few scenarios that kind of reflect what the friends are like together. And I think it goes into thinking about some of the things that can be problematic. So the first thing is that Sam and Ethan, guess what? Spoiler alert, they're having an affair, just in case you didn't know or couldn't remember. But Marianne is the one that knows. And Ethan is staying in her house with Lisa. And Marianne is having a busy day, and she has a play that night. And she asks Ethan if he could take her bunny to the vet. And he's like, of course, I can absolutely take Anastasia to the vet. So he takes the bunny, but instead of going to the vet, what he does is he meets up with Sam, and they go to Sam's house, and all these things happen where make it complicated. Like the alarm goes off, and then he breaks a window, and they do all these things where they're going to get caught. And so they're at Sam's house, and I believe it's not in New York City, it's outside. And so her husband's going to get a notification that this is happening. So they get in their car and they're speeding off, and then something happens and Sam has to brake really hard, and then the bunny flies forward and hits the front window. And the assumption there is that they have killed the bunny. And so instead of telling Marianne what has happened to her bunny, they go and find a bunny that's supposed to... It's like when parents, when the goldfish die, and you just get another one, and you're like, here he is, Mr. Orange, back again. And it could be like a completely different size goldfish, but you just, that kid has that goldfish for 17 years, and you just have a new one every other month or whatever. I feel like that's what they did. They're like, well, just put this bunny in here. She won't notice. And then she had a particular type of bunny that had black rings around its eye, and they're putting mascara on the bunny. Like, oh my gosh. And so to me, that is, they're more concerned about being caught than they are about their friend's pet. And that day should not have been about them. It should have been about Ethan agreeing to take the bunny in. And yeah, things happen and things come up and accidents happen. But everything that they did that was not what the plan was led to the fact that the bunny was injured in that car accident. And then they made the horrible decision of getting a bunny to replace it without saying anything. And you would think that, if my friend took one of my cats, well, first off, you're not going to be able to place Rooney and Ferguson because those babies are priceless. Right, Ferguson? He's sitting behind me cleaning himself. He knows what's up. And so it's like, first off, if I had to ask a friend to take, let's say, Ferguson to the vet, that they're going to do it. And if anything happens, they're going to let me know. And that there might be things, even on accident, if something were to happen to Ferguson, they would feel horrible. And I know that it would be really hard for them to tell me, but I know they would tell me and not lead on this sort of like facade that this bunny still exists, right? And so again, it just seems like Marianne is always an afterthought and not treated with the respect that she deserves. And that it shows that when you have an affair, perhaps you're more concerned about keeping up with images and keeping up with how you present yourself and not getting caught, that then taints your decision-making as it relates to everything else, especially with your friends. Okay, so the next thing includes Max and Ethan, and I think this is where the little brother, big brother comes in. So Ethan comes in, Max wants him to write a YA novel. He starts working on something about wolves, and they call it Wolf Trials. So what ends up happening? Ethan thinks that YA is stupid. He's just writing it so he can then move to other stuff. And Max, I think, is really trying to make his mark in the publishing world and moving forward. He has a lot of ambition. And, he's helping his friend, but his friend is also going to help him. So what happens is they do a lot of work together, and they're developing the story together. And a lot of the ideas are Max's. And what we discover is that Max is actually maybe unconsciously, because he's going through a difficult time with his partner Felix, that he has taken ideas from the meetings that he's attended and not fully paid attention to and fed them to Ethan. And then Ethan has written a book called Wolf Trials. Maybe it's just about Jacob and his crew from Twilight. I don't know. But he ends up stealing Wolf Trials based on that he isn't paying attention at work and just getting kind of information. It's like, why is this song in my head? Well, because I quasi-watched that commercial 10 times when I was watching Hulu, right? I wasn't conscious of it, but then it's just something that comes part of it. And so that's a really interesting thing, is that he's so concerned about making something big, he doesn't even realize that he is setting his friend and himself up for a huge hit in terms of reputation, for plagiarism, and all sorts of things that could end both of their careers. But even more, what we end up seeing is that Ethan is taking all of Max's ideas, but his name is going to be on the book, and Max isn't there at all. And so anytime Max tries to get some of the credit that might be deserved to him, when they move on to a book that isn't plagiarized, that Ethan starts doing his voices, and that's how he does conflict, and then Max comes back. And so he's like, well, maybe we could do a project together. And then Ethan's like, well, maybe we could, that would be something great in the future. And the Max is like, well, there's nothing better than the present. And Ethan's like, something to look forward to. And it's like, why are you making all these voices and doing all these weird quasi 1800 I'm being polite to other people conversation when you could just talk about it and think about that maybe working with friends is difficult and that you might have had a conversation at the beginning so these sorts of things wouldn't happen. How are we going to work together? And even if you didn't have that conversation, then what can you do when you have to have a difficult conversation like, I think I deserve credit for this, where Ethan is just mind blown that he would even be said that he didn't give credit to Max. And one of the things that ends up happening is that Felix steps in to let Ethan know, and Ethan gets really defensive, but they end up later working together. So a couple things happen where the friends sort of ruin each other's stuff, besides the bunny, besides the book. But Marianne she is in awful place. It's like Joey Tribbiani on Friends. Like, some of the stuff they had to sit through is just god-awful, right? They're like overemphasizing it or exaggerating it for sure. But one of the things is they go, half of them are late, some of them are drunk, some of them are dressed in like a tuxedo and some fancy old school, I don't know, is it a prom dress, wedding dress, whatever it is from the street. And then they talk through her entire thing. And she's so excited to see him and to have him there, but they were so rude during the play. And it's like, sometimes when we're supporting our friends, we have to support things, at least she's doing what she wants to do. And maybe by doing these crappy plays, that'll move her into something better. Or maybe she's perfectly happy with what she's doing. Well, then support her in another way or shut the F up, right? Don't come to the event drunk. And so I think that is another sign of disrespect. But also Max's bachelor party. So he's getting married and he wants a bachelor party, and Nick is the one throwing it, and Max has said, Felix is doing all this. They're having a private tour at the Met, and they're having massages, or just a very pleasant evening. And he's like, I don't want any strippers. I don't want it like this. And then Nick gets them all on a private jet, so they're super excited. They're like, oh, we're jetting it. Oh, this is super cool. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And they're in New York City. They jet to Atlantic City. Or is it the New Jersey Shore? I don't know. It's a 15-minute flight. I might be thinking Atlantic City from something else. I think it's actually in New Jersey. But nonetheless, they don't go anywhere where you like, are we going to Barbados? Are we going to, what are we doing? No, we're going somewhere shitty that's in a 15-minute private jet plane. And then there's a stripper everywhere. He has so many strippers and he doesn't want it and he gets upset. And it seems like his bachelor party is everything that Nick would want and not anything that he would want. And he seems to get upset. And then a fake David Beckham shows up because apparently David Beckham is a gay icon. And Fred Savage, who plays Max, is like, I didn't even know that, and I'm gay. And then Sam pretends to be Posh Spice. And then Lisa gets mad, and so she pretends to be Baby Spice. And it just turns into a horrible evening. But then, Max has lost all his money. And then Nick, I think he starts to realize what he's done and that this isn't what his friend wanted. And he just wants his friend to have a good time. And what you see is then he gives Max money to bet on. And, Max doesn't want to take it. He's like, no, I just want you to have a good time. And while they're doing it, he's like, but I can't roll the dice. Max, I can't roll it. And so Sam does it as Posh. And Lisa gets so upset, she takes the die and she throws it and she gets kicked out. And so then they all end up outside and Max comes out and he's so happy after all the bullshit that's happened. He's just won $3,000 and he's like, do you know how much saltwater taffy this will buy? And he's so excited, and off they all go to get all this saltwater taffy. And then they sit on the shitty ass beach and they're eating their saltwater taffy, and it's dawn, and, they're just talking about, when you face this way, it really is beautiful here. And it's like those moments where you can see that their friendship does end up coming together. Lisa chilled out, Sam chilled out, Nick realized what he did. They were able to give Max a good time. And so there are some things that are problematic. So, for example, you don't do what you want to do for a bachelor party. You do what your friend wants to do. And that's another thing. They all forgot Max's birthday. So I feel like there's so many things going on that just doesn't seem helpful to friendship, that we really need to consider our behavior. And I think a lot of it comes down to that, some of these characters are really flawed. And I think more seasons of the show would have been able to work through those layers and we could understand it more. But they still give us a lot to think about. They give us a lot of problems that happen in friendship. What happens when you forget someone's birthday? What happens when you ruin someone's night? What happens when we're concerned about ourselves and not our friend or the things that our friends care about, like Anastasia, right? And so I think we really have to think about, do we take over? Do we dominate conversation? Do we violate space, time, property? There's so many times where Ethan just comes in and just violates all of Max's space with Felix, and he breaks things, and it's just like everything should be given up for him. And Max is so excited to have his friend, and he just wants to please his friend, or quote unquote his big brother, that he does these things and he pisses off Felix. And so I think that we can start to see is that friendships are important. They can be problematic. I think we put a little bit too much pressure on them to be perfect, or that there's always positive, but there's lots of negatives that happen as well that we need to be considerate of. I think we need to think about individually our qualities or our behaviors or the things that we're doing, how they impact us, how they impact our decision making, how they impact our ability not to think clearly about other people. And so things like going through infertility, having an affair, sort of not having a job or any ambition. I mean, it's not like I'm the worst. How do I treat other people? But these are the characters that we have that we can learn from. And so a lot of it does feel like Kate mentioned Ethan is vain. A lot of it is not only that, but it just seems like everyone's only concerned about themselves. And I think we have to consider that each of us is a puzzle piece in our social network, and how do they fit together? How are we causing problems? Are the pieces, do we have to force them in, or are they pieces that lie easily? And I think that's one of the major concerns that comes out of the show for friendship for me, and it's this. Should we stay friends with people that we made those relationships in college? Because for these 6, it seems like whatever friendship they had is exactly what continues today, whether or not the individuals have grown, whether or not their goals have changed. None of us are going to be the same as we were when we were 19. So it doesn't seem like their relationships have changed over time. It seems like they're just stuck in the time. And so it's like, for Max, it's almost like his friends keep him down. For Marianne, she just continues to be overlooked and disrespected. And so it's one of those things where it's like, to me, it becomes something really important about who should we keep as friends? Who should we keep at arm's length and maybe an acquaintance on Facebook? And who should we break up with, so to speak? And I think in this case that some of these relationships are lasting far past their expiration date, or at least without the realization that we change and that we might need to change together, or we might need to cope with change or manage it in some sort of fashion. And for me, a lot of this sounds negative. It sounds like, gosh, I wouldn't want any of that. But wow, what a window to look through. What we might not be able to study actual in real life relationships, but media offers us a very next best thing. And I feel like this show makes me think about relationships a lot. Makes me think about a lot of the issues people have, like when they work together, when they live together temporarily or for long term, when you have infertility issues, when you lose your job. I mean, gosh, there's so much. New relationships, old relationships, divorces, marriages, children, all those things. We really just have to figure out how we can navigate it all together. And that honestly, we have to change together. And these folks did not do that. But nonetheless, even though they didn't change, they still seem to come together and sit around that table. And if there's anything that is a silver lining for me, is this level of loyalty, of being there, maybe in the most dire of situations, that these six can count on each other. They just have a little bit of other homework to do in terms of relationships, and I'm going to have to send Netflix and the creators some of that homework. And I do hope that season 3 will come out, at least an episode, to let us know what happened. You can't just leave us on cliffhangers. So until next time, friends, think about your relationships and maybe apply them to some of the things that you watch in the media to see if there's anything that you might be able to learn or take away or apply. Because without our friends, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Alysa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Are you looking for a history podcast to grab some quotes for a last-minute paper? Or maybe your presentation on Jane Eyre needs a punch-up?
Then do not listen to us.
Do not.
Like, we're begging of you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Kelsey, and we host Make It Modern, a podcast where we talk about history, literature, and all things made before the year 2010, in a way that would probably be frowned upon by any teacher.
We basically delve into the past and stumble into the present.
We discuss things like what type of rosé is appropriate for a medieval execution,
and how we've all been Bingley'd one time or another.
So if you love hearing about people, places, and things with so many issues they could be a Julia Michaels song, join us every Thursday on Spotify and iTunes.
And be sure to follow us on Facebook at Make It Modern, and also on Twitter and Instagram at @MIM_podcast.